Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are going to be talking about a trade that was announced last night. Um, I know there's probably some people thinking, hey, if it was announced last night, why weren't we talking about it last night? Well, there were two reasons. Number one is because I was lazy and it was sort of later in the evening and I didn't want to do it just then. The second part was Um, the specifics of the trade were not 100% clear in terms of some of the stuff that was moving around. The initial report was kind of changed a little while later, so I thought it would be best to maybe wait overnight, see if there were any further sort of additions or changes to the trade before I recorded a video about it. And honestly, that seems like the right call because I think I have the most up-to-date version of the trade now, and it's a little bit different from what was originally announced. But we are going to dive into it. It was a three-team trade that was announced last night between the Dallas Mavericks, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Boston Celtics. And for the most part, it was centered around one guy in particular, and that guy was Grant Williams, formerly of the Celtics. He was kind of the headliner. Obviously, there's one other player and some draft picks at play here, but he was kind of the main guy. That's why he's probably going to be the person on the thumbnail of this video. But we'll take a look at who received what. We'll pull the full three-team trade up on your screen right about now. The Dallas Mavericks receive Grant Williams along with 2 second-round picks. The San Antonio Spurs get Reggie Bullock from Dallas. They also get a 2030 unprotected first-round pick swap from Dallas as well. Meanwhile, for the Boston Celtics, they get 2 second-round picks going their way. They will also generate a traded player exception of about $6.2 million for trading Grant Williams away. So, that is the most up-to-date version of the trade that I could find. The thing that was sort of bouncing around before was how many second-round picks and who they were going to. There was one version of the trade that said the Celtics got 3, then there was one version that somehow said that all 3 teams each got 2, which doesn't make any sense. Why would you even trade them at that point? This is what I found most recently. Dallas and Boston each get 2 second-round picks going their way, in addition to the players that moved. So that's the trade as far as I can tell. I do want to point out one more thing for Dallas, though. They get Grant Williams in this scenario. This was, technically speaking, a sign and trade. So Grant Williams gets a new deal. It's about 4 years and $53 million. So, they don't just get him because he was a free agent, effectively. He was not signed for the Celtics. So they did have to sign him. Then they could send him to Dallas. So, with that in mind, let's talk about what each team really gets here. And we will start with Dallas because the Mavericks obviously got the headline player in this scenario. They get Grant Williams. They get a solid defender. Obviously, that's kind of Grant Williams' whole shtick at this point. They shore up a spot at power forward that was maybe a little bit of a concern for the Mavs heading into the season. Grant Williams is that sort of 3-and-D quintessential kind of player, right? He can spot up, he can shoot. But for the most part, his focus is on defense. And if you watched our early offseason preview for the Mavericks, which hopefully you did, we did talk about the fact that defense for that Mavs team was very much a concern and somewhere that they needed to get better. Grant Williams presumably helps them accomplish that. So, exactly the kind of player that they need. Space the floor, play good defense. His numbers are not fantastic. You take a look at his stats from the last season: 8.1 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 45.4% shooting from the field, 39.5% from 3, though. So, is he a prolific scorer? No. Is he going to gobble up rebounds? Is he going to go out and get you double-digit boards a game? Not really either. But he plays some solid defense. That 39.5% shooting from beyond the arc last season is very impressive. His career mark is still like 37 or some odd percent, 37, 38, somewhere in that range. So he is not going to be a guy to go out and score in bunches for you. That's not really his game. But he can find you a 3 or 2 in a game. He can play solid defense, and he's someone that is very much necessary for this team, considering they're going to be almost entirely focused around the duo of Luka and Kyrie. So they're going to have the ball in their hands most of the time. The vast majority of the offensive opportunities are going to go to them. So to have a guy like Williams who can play defense and occasionally space the floor for you if necessary is pretty damn good. So a solid pickup for the Mavs. As I said before, it shores up that power forward position that they were kind of concerned with. One of the reasons why they're sort of concerned is because they're thin at that position right now, right? They did pick up a couple of guys in the draft that you could maybe look at, right? I think Blake Lively was, or not Blake Lively, Derek Lively. Blake Lively is someone else. But Derek Lively the second is someone with potential, certainly a solid pickup for them in the draft. Obviously, that's why they use a top 15 pick on him. But is he ready immediately? That's going to be the question. Not just with him, but with some of the other guys they picked up in this draft. You don't know if they're ready to go day one. So you kind of needed someone with a little bit more experience, someone that you could rely on, especially considering you traded away Bertans on draft night and you still have not re-signed Christian Wood. So they needed someone down low and they get him. For the Mavericks as well, they do also manage to move Reggie Bullock, a guy who effectively kind of played the same role that Grant Williams did. You know, he was a three-point shooter. He was a threat from outside. He played a little bit of defense, but Bullock's numbers had kind of dipped a little bit. Honestly, even with them dipping, he was still averaging around the same points per game that Grant Williams did last season, but it still feels like a little bit of an upgrade. Williams provides the same threat from outside, but is maybe a little bit more reliable on the defensive end than Reggie Bullock was. So I think he might also be a little bit less expensive too. Did not double check that, but I'll look into their contracts, presumably in editing, and maybe throw something up on the screen for you there. But they get a little bit of an upgrade at that sort of hybrid small forward, power forward position, right? So Dallas has to be happy about that. In the meantime, they get 2 second-round picks. Always nice for some flexibility moving forward. You can use them if you want. You can package them in a trade. Nowadays, 2 to 3 second-rounders sometimes sort of just takes the place of a first-rounder for trade purposes. So that could allow them to make some moves down the line. And looking at the 2030 pick swap that they did give away, yeah, okay, you gave away an unprotected pick swap. Maybe that comes back to bite you in the ass, sure. But 2030 is so far down the line right now that the Mavs really should not be concerned, right? If they end up losing the number 1 pick or something 7 years from now, then they will deal with the consequences of that when they come. For now, I don't think they really care too much. But that does it for the Mavs. We will move along to the other Texas squad here, talking about the San Antonio Spurs. They're the team that is just kind of in this one, just sort of involved, right? They're not really a headliner. They didn't get anything massive, but they help facilitate this 3-team trade, and they do get something for their troubles, right? First and foremost, they get Reggie Bullock for relatively cheap, right? And I just finished talking about in the Mavs section how his numbers were down compared to some previous seasons in terms of his scoring, but Reggie Bullock is still a career 38.4% 3-point shooter. So, yeah, the numbers were down, but for his career, he has been pretty damn reliable from outside. If you're the Spurs, you're willing to take a chance that he continues to be reliable for you on a contract that's not exactly backbreaking for San Antonio. So he gives the team some strength on the wing in terms of both his offense and his defense. And I think most importantly here for the Spurs, you get yourself an outside shooter who can play from the wing and someone who could potentially balance the floor a little bit, because Wembanyama is going to be the guy down low. The focus is going to be on him for a lot of the offense over the course of the season. So if Wemby can just go down there and just score on everybody in the post over and over and over again, fine. Run that all day long until someone stops you. But if they can stop you or slow you down, why not have a little bit of an inside-out game, right? Why not have a guy in the perimeter to knock down a three. If the defense collapses on Wembanyama, dish it out. You've got a 38% career three-point shooter who's just sitting there waiting for that pass, and you're still going to present that threat. Very much the kind of style that we saw from the Dwight Howard era Magic, right? That's the way that they played. They had one ball handler, they had Dwight Howard down low, and then they had three shooters around the outside. So you either let Dwight just slam the ball down your throat, or you double or triple teamed him, he would dish out to a shooter, and the Magic would get their points that way. So that took them all the way to the NBA Finals. They lost to the Lakers because, yeah, that Lakers team was pretty damn good. But it's a strategy that we know can work, especially in the modern NBA that is so three-point heavy. It's something that the Spurs definitely want to have in their repertoire. Maybe they're not going to build their entire lineup in that style because there are some risks to it, but having a guy like Bullock on the perimeter who can knock down those shots if the defense overcommits to Wembanyama is certainly not a bad plan. But the Spurs get Bullock. They also get that pick swap. So we talked about it when we were looking at it from the Mavs angle. 2030 is a long ways away. Just in terms of literal time, but also in terms of NBA planning, right? No team in the league has a plan for 7 years from now. That's just not how this works, right? Contracts won't even extend out that far. But it's an unprotected pick swap, right? I mean, that has some value. I mentioned, maybe the Mavs even lose the first pick because it's unprotected completely, right? If they get into the number one overall, the Spurs could just say, actually, no, we would like that pick, and there is nothing that the Mavs could do about it. So is it a factor right now? No, obviously not. It's not going to come into play until about 7 years from now. But it does have value, and if you're the Spurs, it is better to have an unprotected pick swap than to not have it. That's the simple truth of it. It is a long-term asset, but it's still an asset. So why not sit on it? Why not hold it? And in 7 years, we'll see just how valuable that ends up being. But that is it for the Spurs. As I said, they're kind of just the third team here. They're not super involved in this other than getting Bullock. But it's a little bit interesting because we move now to the Boston Celtics. I would say that they are the sort of secondary main team, quote unquote, in this trade, and they didn't even get any actual player. They're the ones who traded Grant Williams away. So you would think, why are they the secondary team? They didn't get anything. Well, they're kind of the instigators here, right? Dallas are the ones who get Grant Williams, but the Celtics are the ones who felt the need to move him. And there is a decent reason why, if I were to speculate here. If we're looking at the Celtics, we already talked about this a little bit in their I keep saying EOP, early offseason preview. That's just my acronym for it. We talked about it with the Porzingis trade. We talked about it in the video I put out yesterday about why the Celtics may be quiet on the free agent market. Their cap space situation is not fantastic. It is very much limiting the moves that they can make right now. And Grant Williams, being a free agent, was not directly contributing to the team's salary at the moment. However, they would have had to re-sign him. They would have had to put him on a new contract. And the kind of money that he was going to get is the kind of money that the Celtics really didn't have available or didn't want to use to retain Grant Williams. I mentioned earlier on the actual nature of the contract that he gets now with Dallas. It was 4 years and about $53 million. So that's $13 million and some change per year. That's not really a price that the Celtics felt like they could afford. So they decide, if we can't keep him, let's at least trade him and let's try to get something for him. And that's exactly what they do. So unfortunately for the Celtics, this move does feel somewhat necessary. They did not want to flirt with going too far over that luxury tax threshold, so Grant Williams has to be dealt somewhere else. Now, what they get back in exchange is, it's good, but it's not fantastic, right? They get 2 second-round picks themselves. So again, you've got some flexibility. You add to the war chest. Those are 2 more assets that you could maybe include in some sort of deal yourself if you don't plan on using them. Especially since I couldn't find out what year some of these picks are for. Some of the initial reports did have years attached to them, but that was back when the numbers of who was getting what picks and how many was different from what's presented now. So I'm not 100% sure what the years are on some of these second round picks for the Celtics. That could impact when and how they choose to use them, obviously. But for now, we're not sure. But they do get 2 second round picks. They will also receive one other thing for trading Grant Williams, and that is a traded player exception. It's worth around $6 million. And traded player exception basically is just a pool of money that you can effectively use in a transaction to absorb some of the incoming contract and have it not count against your salary cap. So $6 million is not crazy, but for a guy in Grant Williams that you felt you didn't have the money to re-sign and keep anyway, the fact that you get any sort of anything to help with your cap situation is better than nothing. So that really is the theme here for the Celtics. They were not going to be able to re-sign Grant Williams, so anything that they could get for him has to be viewed as a positive, because otherwise he was just going to walk in free agency. So, as I said, unfortunate, but something that felt a little necessary for the Celtics. There is now a little bit of a concern, though, for these Celtics, because they are kind of thin at the power forward position with Grant Williams now gone. Part of the reason why they picked up Brissett, who they just recently signed to a veteran minimum contract, because they needed bodies to fill some of those positions. Not that Brissett is just some dude. I mean, he's a pretty solid player. His numbers are not bad for the position he was in previously, but they got him for cheap. They could have a center, or maybe Porzingis himself, maybe play the 4 occasionally to make up for it. We did see that with some of Porzingis' other teams as well. He does occasionally drift between the center and the power forward positions, so you could set up a kind of dual big man role there, right? Porzingis at the 4, maybe Robert Williams or someone at the 5, and that's a whole lot of size and length that you present on the interior that very few teams are going to want to mess with. So honestly, that's probably the most logical solution here for the Celtics. I don't think this is a big deal, but losing Grant Williams obviously does make your sort of forward stable a little bit thinner, a little bit less impressive. But they should have the manpower to cover up for that deficit. Of course, that's assuming that the Celtics remain as they are. There's a lot of people who are trying to sort of stir up an idea that the Celtics are trying to grab assets for some sort of move. I say some sort of move. The rumors that people are trying to spin here is that the Celtics are going after Damian Lillard, which I don't know what that trade would look like, but if they were already shy on their cap space after Porzingis, imagine how much they're going to be in financial trouble here if they go after Dame, because that contract is massive. They would have to give up either one of their star players to make the salary matching work, or they would just have to give up on being under the luxury tax threshold and just say, just forget it. We're going for it, right? We're going to be over the luxury tax threshold. We're going to pay the bill because we've now got Damian Lillard, which, yeah, fair. I mean, if you add Dame to the Celtics, I don't think you care about the bill because you have a pretty solid chance of winning a championship. Of course, let's just pull all this back a little bit here, because the rumors that are being stirred up here are not coming from anywhere even remotely official. This is just kind of fans on Twitter or Threads now, I guess. I don't, whatever social media platform we're on now. That's them trying to sort of will this into existence. I haven't really heard anything official about the Celtics trying to make a move, but you never know, right? That's the kind of things people think about here. But it could also come from the standpoint of the Celtics are losing a guy that the fans really liked in Grant Williams, so they're trying to do the mental gymnastics to figure out why this would happen. But I think honestly, it's just the money. They weren't going to be able to retain Grant Williams at a price they were comfortable with, so they sent him somewhere where he's going to get to play. He's going to get to be an integral part of a Mavericks lineup that does look quite a bit more impressive than it did at the start of this offseason. So I wouldn't say everyone wins in this trade, but I would say I don't think anybody lost, right? Everyone sort of gains something or resolves some sort of issue. And, well, nowadays maybe that's the best you can expect. But those are my thoughts on the trade. What do you think? Do you think Grant Williams is going to sort of be a solid addition here for the Mavericks? Do you believe that the Spurs picking up Reggie Bullock is going to be something that factors in? You know, how much of a role do you think Bullock plays in that rotation for them? And what do you think the next move is here for the Celtics? Was this just a cost-cutting move, a get assets for a guy who we're going to lose anyway kind of scenario, or do you believe that the Celtics are still in the market for some sort of big trade? It could certainly happen, but again, I'm a little skeptical. But please let me know what you think from any and all perspectives in this trade. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.